Lori Cardoza-Moore with an update at PJTN. I want to bring to your attention an article that is circulating the end of last week, this weekend, and many of you have probably already seen the article, but we need to talk about this article because it's very disturbing, the information that we're receiving. And this is an article about the Harvard-Harris poll. This was a poll of the majority of registered 18 to 24 voters, of over 2,000 people were polled in the United States. And here are some of the results of this poll. And I'm going to go through these results, and I know you're going to be shocked, but we're not really shocked because we've already seen this coming. We've seen this for years, especially in the evangelical Christian community. We have been very concerned about the direction our children are going when it comes to support for Israel, support for the Jewish state, because our children are not being taught and haven't been taught for at least 2 decades about Israel, the truth about Israel, about our biblical duty to stand with Israel. So it's coming out of ignorance. It came out of ignorance in the church because pastors weren't teaching about this, because after all, many Christians are told, and I hear this from a lot of Christians, that we don't have to read the Old Testament. That's over. That was nailed to the cross. It no longer exists. So we publish New Testament Bibles without the foundation. You can't know where you're going, or you don't understand your destiny unless you understand your history. That's why teaching history has been so important here at PJTN, why we've been involved in education. Because if we don't teach an accurate perspective of history, then we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of history that we've done. So we've talked about this. We're not surprised at these numbers. We've seen these numbers moving in this direction, but it seems that October 7th was the tipping point. And I just want to, again, share with you some of the results of this poll. Here's one of the shocking examples. 60% of those 18 to 24-year-olds who were polled believed that October 7th terror attacks were justified. They believe that the brutal attacks against our Jewish brethren, innocent men, women, and children, were justified. How in the world does that happen? How can kids in America, 18 to 24-year-olds, side with a brutal attack against innocent civilians? We can understand the army, the military, they're going to fight, but these are civilians. These were babies baked in ovens while their mother was being raped. These are women who were brutally raped. These are babies who had their heads chopped off, and children with their heads chopped off. And 60% of the 18 to 24-year-olds polled in this poll believed that it was justified. Here's another example. 53% of those same students that were polled, 18 to 24-year-old, believe that it is okay. It's free. They are free to call for genocide of Jews. I'm horrified by this. We knew this was coming, but did we ever think that our kids would justify brutal attacks against people? What have we done to our kids? What are we tolerating? Here's another, 67% of the 18 to 24-year-olds think university presidents went far enough. You all saw the whole display of those university presidents who testified before Congress, and their lame excuses and their responses, who smiled so arrogantly like Cheshire cats. You know they met beforehand, and they probably laid out their strategy as to what each one of them were going to say. It was disgusting. It was a disgusting display of academia, but that's the reality of where we live. Here's another 79%. So all those 18 to 24-year-olds, probably the majority of them were probably white. Guess what they said? 79% of them believe white people are oppressors and non-white people should be favored. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the influence or the impact of pushing CRT, of pushing Common Core, pushing DEI, SEL, all of this garbage that we've been pushing in the schools, everything that we've been fighting to keep out of the schools. This is the result of educating, allowing our children to be indoctrinated with propaganda. We have turned our children against our nation. 67%, it goes on, it gets better. 67% of the 18 to 24-year-olds believe Jews belong in the category of oppressors. This goes back centuries. This is the same propaganda, the same narrative we heard out of the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. This is nothing new. Blame the Jew. Again, it goes on. 60% of those same students polled think Israel is trying to commit genocide in Gaza. 67% of those 18 to 24-year-olds think Hamas can be negotiated with. This is how stupid our children are. And we can't really blame them because our tax dollars have been paying for this stupidity to teach our kids. And don't think that it's just happening in the public school system, ladies and gentlemen. It's also happening in your Jewish day schools, your Catholic schools, your Christian schools, your charter schools. There's no safe place except for the home to educate our children anymore on the planet. And this is every Western country is dealing with this. Here's another 51% of those 18 to 24-year-olds think Israel started the crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, this just makes me very upset because we have been shouting from the rooftops for over a decade when we found a Pearson published textbook with a quote that legitimized Palestinians blowing themselves up in a Jerusalem restaurant because they were waging a war against Israeli government policies and army actions. And back then, there were many people who didn't see it as a problem. Oh, it's just one, just like the school district. They didn't get rid of the textbook because they said, oh, it's just one quote. No, it was more. There was another quote that accused Israel of being occupiers in the land, in their biblical homeland. How can you be occupiers in your biblical homeland? I mean, you can occupy your biblical homeland. We know that from the text of the Bible. But we were showing our state legislators, and we have been telling parents and citizens across the country, get your kids' textbooks, read the civics textbooks, read your children's history textbooks, American history textbooks, Middle East history textbooks. Read them. Your children's human geography textbooks, because this is where this propaganda is. And we warned people back then that if we did not take on this battle, we were going to lose our country because our children were going to turn against us. All the evidence was right there in the book. We saw it coming. Unfortunately, being the small organization that we are, we couldn't convince enough people to invest in stopping this. Yes, we have several major donors who are funding this, but they can't do it alone. And we can't stop now. We have to increase our efforts. We cannot be silent. We just finished publishing another white paper on the indoctrination going on in the Jewish day schools and the Catholic schools. Americans need to see, Jewish and Christian, they need to see what even the private schools are teaching our children. We will lose our country, ladies and gentlemen. We're on the way to losing our country now. I want to remind you that the only way that we know truth, how do we know truth? Because a lot of these young people, they don't know what's going on. I saw a poll that was done on one of the networks, and they asked these young people, similar age, what they thought about what was going on and what happened on October 7th. They were asked, what happened on October 7th? Many of the people that were asked that question didn't even know what October 7th was. This is how brain dead our children are. Because our children are wrapped up in their own technology. They think they're going to reliable sources to get their information when they're actually getting disinformation. Just like what we saw in the textbooks in schools across this country. It wasn't just Williamson County, Tennessee, ladies and gentlemen. Because after we exposed the content in the curriculum, Fox News picked up the story and ran with it. Many of you may not know this story, but you need to understand the history of how long PJTN has been in this battle and where we are and why I need your help. I can't do this. Our team can't do this on the budget that we're doing it. This is too big. There are organizations that are funding the opposition. Pearson Publishers, for example, has the monopoly on our children's education. Do you even know who Pearson, who funds Pearson, who their four largest shareholders are? It's going to shock you because one of them, actually two of them, all of them are major players in what's going on in the Middle East right now. These shareholders include the Islamist governments of Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Libya. Do you think they got a good return on their investment? I would say so. Mission accomplished. They've turned our country against Israel. So how do we know? How do we counter the disinformation that our children are being subjected to? We have to go back to the Bible, ladies and gentlemen. And I know you're going to say, no, we can't use the Bible. Oh, yes, we can. The Smithsonian Institute does. The Smithsonian Institute recognizes that the Bible is the most legitimate source to cite in history. And they even go on to say, because the people and the events that actually took place actually happened. That's how we know. But there's another way, as people of faith, that we know truth when we hear it, and that's through our spirit. When you hear something that you know isn't right, there's something you get a check in your spirit. That's what I call it. Something is unsettling, doesn't sit right, doesn't seem accurate. You can't communicate or articulate exactly what it is that you think is wrong. But the false accusations and the disinformation that our children are being subjected to, we as adults are being subjected to. Even Christians, even pastors who won't even speak about this issue from the pulpit because they think it's political. Oh my gosh. I don't want to be that pastor. I don't want to be standing next to that pastor at the great white throne of judgment when he's going to be held accountable. When he stands before God and God asks him, while he was alive, and the modern state of Israel was reborn as the prophets foretold, what did you do to defend your brother Judah when they were being attacked? Well, we know if we look at the book of Obadiah, the prophet, God told him in the last days he was going to wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother Jacob, Israel, the Jews, were held in captivity and they did nothing. We are all going to be held accountable. Each one of us. We will stand before that throne of judgment and we will have to give an answer to what we did and what we didn't do when our Jewish brethren were being attacked, when they were being lied about. We may not even realize that we're violating the Ten Commandments, the ninth one, bearing false witness against our brethren. God does nothing, ladies and gentlemen. How do we know that the Bible is true? Because he does nothing without first telling the prophets. We have to search the scriptures now to know and understand the times that we live in. And we have to challenge the lies and the disinformation, and yes, even our governments. We cannot sit back and allow our governments to fund terrorism and to tie Israel's hands behind her back while she's trying to fight a war for her very survival. Ladies and gentlemen, you have got to educate your children, and I want to remind you again, the greatest resource you have is right there on our website at pjtn.org. Go to our media page, watch our documentary films, watch our Focus on Israel programs. There's over 100 episodes that have been produced. We have 5 documentary films to watch. You should take this time, as we're going into the holiday season, take this time to teach your children, no matter how small they are. Of course, don't watch The Forgotten People with young children. Children under 13 should not watch that documentary. But everything else they should be watching. And then after you watch them, sit down and have a conversation with your children. Because I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, your kids are not learning this history. This is biblical history in modern text. We're trying to go back to show Christians, Jews, what the Bible says and why we have to stand up and defend the promise, the covenant that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and their descendants forever. That land was given to Israel by Almighty God himself. And we are commanded in the Bible not to move our brethren's ancient boundary stones. And we are allowing that to happen in Israel right now. Our governments, Western governments, Christian governments, supposedly, are allowing this to take place. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you're listening and you're reading these emails and you're seeing things that are lies being perpetrated, it is disinformation. It is bearing false witness against your brethren. You've got to go back to the Bible. And if you need help connecting the Bible to what's happening today, go to PJTN. Go to the media page, pjtn.org/media, and watch those programs. Take notes, then pray and ask God what you can do. Because remember, the prophet Ezekiel was warned about the role of the watchman. And the role of the watchman is to warn the inhabitants of the city when the watchman sees the enemy advancing. Because if the watchman warns the inhabitants, then the inhabitants can prepare themselves. Well, they weren't warned on October 7th. And Jews were slaughtered, and they're still being butchered and slaughtered under the watchful eye of Hamas. If you are not a subscriber to this website, to PJTN, if you have not joined as a watchman, PJTN, I want to ask you to please go to the website and do that today. Get our media alerts, get our action alerts, sign up to get on the newsletter so that you receive the newsletter, so you will have the information. You'll get these alerts that I put out to help you so that you can articulate this message. That's what I'm here for, is to produce the content and share information with all of our supporters so that you can go out as watchmen to share this with your sphere of influence. If we will do that, God is watching. If we will do that, then we will be able to defend and protect our Jewish brethren. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's coming. And it's not just coming for the Jews. The enemy is coming for the great Satan, too. And if you don't know who the great Satan is, it's America. The little Satan is Israel. The pigs and the apes, that's America and Israel. They're coming after us. And either we're going to stand up and we're going to proclaim justice and righteousness, and we're going to teach our children as God commanded us to. We are to teach these things to our children and our children's children throughout our generations. Even when we're great-grandparents, we're still to be teaching our grandchildren. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I want to ask you, please pray. Please go to our website and sign up to get on our mailing list. Please become a watchman. It's $20 a month. Help us to produce more programming content to reach Christians and Jews and all people of conscience around the world with this message. We have to combat this disinformation that is plaguing the next generation. Our strategy has succeeded, has been successful. And we know that because look at what we did in the state of Florida under Governor Ron DeSantis. After showing him the content in the textbooks, he committed, when he was running for governor, to get rid of the textbooks and get rid of Common Core, and he did. And I was able to serve on the Civics Standards Review Team, PJTN was, and we reviewed the textbooks, or we reviewed the standards, the civic standards, and our contribution to the civic standards in the state of Florida was teaching our children about the role that the Hebrew Bible played in the founding of our country. Teaching them the role that the Hebrew Bible played in the drafting of our founding documents. Teaching them the role that the Hebrew Bible played in the form and structure of our government, our republic. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, our republic, the concept of the republic comes out of the Torah of Moses. That's why the Puritans came here. They wanted to worship God in spirit and in truth. That is our history. This is our destiny, ladies and gentlemen. But we can't fulfill our destiny unless we know our history. We have to fight for it. And first and foremost, we have to search our children's curriculum. And I mean your curriculum in your private schools and in your public schools. And don't think, I've had parents who have their kids in private schools tell me, oh, but I know the headmaster. Well, you know what? I knew my headmaster too when my children were in a private Christian school, and I had to remove them because they were bringing the propaganda into the classroom. That was back in 2006 in Nashville, Tennessee, an evangelical Christian school. So please do not think that your children are safe. Look at their textbooks. And then if you find anything that is questionable, I want to ask you, please contact me. Email me at info@pjtn.org. We want to know. We want to hear from you. We can take them down, ladies and gentlemen. We did it in Williamson County a decade ago because when we found that anti-Semitic quote in that Pearson textbook, we forced Pearson to change the content, to remove that content. We were able to convince the state legislature to change the laws in Tennessee so that textbooks in Tennessee, especially history and civics, textbooks must be accurate. They must be unbiased. They must reflect the values of the community. That's why we can win this battle. We proved that we could do it. And come election, because many of you know that our goal is flipping school boards, getting rid of these corrupt school board members who are pushing this garbage down our children's throats. And so the school board that chose to vote to keep that anti-Semitic textbook in our kids' classrooms in Williamson County, we went to work. We had 4 months In 4 months, the community raised up 6 individuals to run for those seats. And in 4 months, come election day, all those 6 school board members who voted to keep that textbook, we brought all 6 of them down. It can be done, ladies and gentlemen, but it requires your getting involved and you're supporting PJTN. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this message. This is critically important. We cannot lose our children. We've lost 2 generations. We have to raise an additional generation that is going to combat the 2 generations before it. They will be the future leaders, and we can't let the evil prevail. What will we say to all those veterans who shed their blood in foreign lands to fight for our freedom? That we were too lazy? That we didn't give a damn about our kids or their future? No, the history books will be written about this period of time. What will they say about us? We are God-fearing Americans and patriots, Jew and Christian, people of faith and people of conscience. We must stand up. The world is counting on us. God bless you and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the state of Israel, and these United States.